Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Achieving Radical Resilience with the new Veeam Data Platform 23H2. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so excited that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because resilience is one of those things that I think has become more and more a topic of conversation. And today, not only are we talking about resilience, but radical resilience. Doesn't get much better than that, right? Because, hey, we would all love to believe that we have built the impregnable fortress of solitude that no one can find, no one can infiltrate. But we also know that with the ever evolving complexity of threat landscapes and bad actors, well, we have to start planning for the day when the worst happens, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't focus on the defenses. It just means that we're thinking about the what's next, the backups, the recovery plans, the speed and efficacy of our resiliency strategies so that on that very worst, no good, terrible day, maybe it isn't actually all that bad. And today we're going to hear from some experts at Veeam who are here to talk to us about some awesome new innovations coming from the Veeam team that are going to help you achieve that peace of mind that comes with radical resiliency. This is going to be such a cool conversation, and I cannot wait to get started. So let's zip through some of our housekeeping information and we'll get this show on the road. All right, first, I want to draw your attention on over to the questions section of your webinar console. Now, this is the best place to get involved, to get interactive, and post all of your insightful questions, all of your interesting comments, any feedback, suggestions, ideas, general musings. We want to hear from you. So find that questions tab right now, and we're going to start out by saying hi or hello, give a little test run, give a wave to the community out there with us, tell us how your day is going. A quick side note, that questions window is also the best place to reach out to the Actual Tech Media team if you are having any technical issues. Knock on wood, of course. But I do want to suggest to all of you that if you haven't tried it already, a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual tech gremlins. So if something comes up today and it's being a little persnickety, try a browser refresh. If that doesn't work, you can shoot a message to the Actual Tech Media team there in that questions window, and we will be there to help. All right, the last thing I want to point out on our guided tour today is the handouts tab because it is absolutely packed with great information and follow-ups to our conversation here. First and foremost, make sure that you get that data protection trends report for 2024. You can also check out the Veeam Data Platform and snag a white paper on building a cyber resilient data recovery strategy. And if all that cool content wasn't enough of a cool giveaway, we also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Of course, you must be in live attendance during the webinar in order to qualify to win, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media Prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's linked for you in that handy dandy handouts tab. So just click and scroll down and you will find those waiting for you there. Okay, well, that is it for the housekeeping. We are ready to jump into our webinar. I told you we would get to it quickly because we have a lot to cover, and I am so excited to introduce you all to our expert presenters today, a dynamic duo, if you will. Here with us today, we have Emily Tejas, Product Strategy Technologist at Veeam, and Matt Crape, Senior Technical Product Manager, also at Veeam. Emily and Matt, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you have a lot of information to get through. We're going to explore the new Veeam Data Platform. We've got some demos. We've got all kinds of good things ahead, as well as some Q&A at the end. So there's a lot of good stuff in store, and we are going to get rolling. Emily, I think you're going to kick us off, so I'm going to bring you guys out on the platform here and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Emily.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Emily Tejas. I am a product strategy technologist with Veeam Software, and joined with me today is Mr. Matt Crape. Matt, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. So my name's Matt Crape. I'm a senior technical product marketer here at Veeam, and we're here to talk to you today about some of what's new in the Veeam Data Platform 23H2 release. And one of the common themes that you'll see as we talk today is achieving what we call radical resilience. Now, if you look up the definition of the word resilience, you'll actually see that it's more than just about withstanding a threat. It's also about being able to bounce back to the form that things were in quickly. And we equate that with getting your business back online in fast manner. So with that, let's get going here, and we'll take a quick look at the agenda, where we'll talk about some ransomware trends that we've been seeing in the industry. After that, Emily's going to walk us through navigating a cyber attack and what that looks like. After that, we'll switch back to me and I'll cover off some of the high-level points about how the Veeam Data Platform can really help you achieve that radical resilience that you'll hear us talk about. And of course, no Veeam webinars, done without some product demos, and we'll wrap things up with Q&A. So with that being said, let's talk about some ransomware trends. If you're not familiar with Veeam's Data Protection Report, it is one of the largest independent studies that's performed in our industry. In short, Veeam works with a third-party company who goes out and interviews organizations of all sizes, and we collect data and analyze it, and we provide these reports free. In fact, you could just download the report from the QR code there up in the top right corner. But why do we do this? Because we would like to share what the insights are in the industry, what you should be looking at as an IT practitioner, as well as hopefully let you get ahead of the ball, right? So you want to make sure you have a strong defense in place before you get attacked. So one of the interesting things about this slide is you'll see 75% of respondents had at least one ransomware attack in 2023. Like, it just boggles the mind, the fact that almost everyone out there has been hit with ransomware. They've got some of the folks who have been hit multiple times, 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of work that needs to be involved implementing what might be your DR plan that many times a year in your production environment. Now, one thing that I do find interesting about this slide is you'll see that 25% of respondents reported no ransomware attacks. The interesting thing about this is we're seeing this more and more often where there's actually a threat or ransomware in the environment, but it's not actually kicked off right away. Quite often it will sit there and it will just stay quiet as the threat actor works on gaining more access. And at the end of the day, you might run into the situation where this threat's been in there for, let's say, 6 months, but you only have backups that go back 3, 4 weeks, which goes into proper planning as well as making sure that you securely restore things. So, Emily, I know that you want to walk us through what a typical cyber attack might look like. Why don't we get going on that?
Yeah. So I think it's important, right, that we have a base understanding of what do cyber attacks actually look like, especially when we want to make sure that we're properly planning and doing everything that we can to get business back up and running once we've already been faced with such an event. So, Matt kind of hit it, right in the beginning. There's different ways that either our company or people get access to our data. And one thing to kind of keep in mind is that, maybe here on this timeline, we're showcasing it from January to December just to kind of make it a little bit more easier to understand. But this can happen at any point in time, right? It doesn't have to be over a 12-month period. This could be over a week. This could take a couple of months. It really just comes down to, the different types of ways that you have implemented your environment and, the longer it takes for an attacker to get access to the data that they want. So, that being said, threat actors are going to be methodical in their attack, regardless of how long it's going to take them. So for this example, what we're going to see here is first, threat actors usually do some reconnaissance. They're going to observe your environment. They're going to research, identify potential targets. They're going to look for any vulnerability. They're going to discover if there's any type of third party that might be connected to the target and what data do they have access to, if any. This can take place both online and offline. The latter can definitely be done through penetration testing or social engineering as well. From here, threat actors will usually sneak in and weaponize or deliver their payload. So during this stage, what you'll see is they'll leverage all the work that they've done in that reconnaissance stage and start to use it against their identified target. Weaponization can mean a multitude of things, right? It could include either creating new types of ransomware or malware, either could be modifying existing tools that are already available, and then just figuring out ways that they can go ahead and they can deliver that. Another thing to kind of keep in mind, right, that this could also include things like the phishing emails, where they're maybe containing malware as part of the attachments in the subject lines. You would be surprised that even in this day and age, right, a lot of different ways that attackers get access into company systems still do come from phishing emails. Once those threat actors gain access, right, they're going to start to exploit and take advantage and create a base of operations here. So essentially, they want to get access into as much as what they can available to them. They'll start to then move laterally across the network and even elevate their access. So they'll begin to snoop around without being detected and try to compromise any additional higher value targets, right? The idea here, and what you'll start to see, is that usually they don't want to be found quickly, right? They want to get as much access to as much data as possible, so that way that'll give them a better payday at the end of the day for you wanting to get your data back. And then finally, once they've done that, they're going to go into that cripple recoverability, right? So they want to make sure that they're going to be able to deny any type of restore operations. They're going to start removing privileges and access, and then start doing that encryption and doing the ransomware declared. So at any point in time throughout this 12-month cycle that you've seen, you know, this is going to be one of those places where cyber attacks can be showcased. Now, the one thing you might see as well is that those small zeros down here below is backups. So this might be where we were taking backups on, you know, a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis. And maybe this might be an option for us to be able to recover and be able to get some of that data back if they would have deleted it or exfiltrated it or corrupted it. We have a way that we can establish or get back data before any of that had taken place. This also shows us where we can start leveraging different malware tools and be able to establish that reconnaissance of when did they get access into our environment, what type of data might they have had access to, and then being able to go through our cleaning process of recovering data as best as we can into a clean environment that's not going to be susceptible to a secondary attack again, like Matt was showing earlier on that slide, right? We want to make sure that we're doing a great job after an attack to clean and get as much data back as possible without possibly leaving some type of infection point in there. So next, let's talk about what this looks like. So from a cybersecurity perspective, we really talk about embracing the breach. And really what this is just assuming a mindset that's going to help us to either make guided investments to the way that we design, the way that we operate different types of security practices. It also helps us to create some of these different principles that are around it when it comes to, you know, designing the system, making compromise difficult, making the disruption difficult, making compromise detection easier, and then reducing the impact of compromise. So all of these principles are helping us to either create a better or safeguarded environment, so that way in the event that we are attacked, we can limit the amount that spread could possibly happen from within an attacker that has access into our system. So let's talk about some of those Veeam Data Platform security capabilities.
Yeah, perfect. So if you're a Veeam customer, or maybe you're new to us, you might have seen this architecture diagram floating around, right? And let's just take a minute to go through there and kind of explain what it means. So, you know, back in the day, backup and recovery, that was enough to get you out of a mess. But things have changed, as we saw, you know, especially with that timeline that Emily built out. Security really is a journey. It's something that we need to take care of every single day. And in order to do that reliably, you also need the monitoring and the analytics portion built onto this. But by the time you do find out that there's a threat in your environment, once the encryption starts, it's already too late, right? You need to flip over into DR mode, and that's where the recovery orchestration comes in. So the Veeam Data Platform is really built on these three pillars. All of it's powered by the same underlying, you know, native APIs. So all these different components, which are powered by Veeam Backup and Replication, Veeam One, and Veeam Recovery Orchestrator, they all talk to each other natively in a secure manner. Now, similarly, from a protection standpoint, we also work and protect with many different workloads. It's not just VMs, right? That's a large part of the story, especially in data centers today, but we protect physical bare metal machines. We protect things at the application level. We have SaaS offerings with our platform extensions for things like 365 and Salesforce, or even if we want to do things like take your physical workloads and restore them to the cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, we can help you with that. And of course, we've got offerings from Kasten for protection for your Kubernetes workflows and whatnot. Now, with the release of VDP 12, about, in February 2023 here, we saw a significant number of new security features or enhancements added directly into the platform. Some of the favorites, multi-factor authentication, being able to basically force that somebody has to have a secondary token in order to log into the console, right? That's part of that whole security as a journey conversation, making sure that you make it harder for attackers to come in. Similarly, the best practices analyzer was very, very popular. At a glance, being able to click a button and know, hey, do I have these basic principles taken care of for my security journey? But all that said and done, there's been even more enhancements with the latest release. So starting with VDP 12.1, we've taken this approach of helping you detect and identify cyber threats throughout the stack. So we've got things like early threat detection, which is our new inline malware detection engine. And the neat thing about this is it will detect malware at the time of backup. So it's not a process that runs after backup is completed. You don't need to send analytics, wait for stuff to come back from the cloud. No, it's being done at the time of backup. This really allows you to minimize the window from the time of the infection activity to the time that you detect it. Similarly, we are able to help you proactively find these threats with things like integrating with SIM solutions via syslog or Veeam1's ServiceNow integrations. And where this really helps you is, say Veeam1 finds an alert, it can automatically create an instance in ServiceNow for you and let you leverage those existing workflows that you might already have in place. Now, speaking about things that you might have in place, that's where the Veeam Instant API comes in as well. Being able to leverage tools, for example, like something from Sophos, where it says, you know what, we found this threat on this machine. It can alert Veeam backup and replication, and from there, it can mark a backup as suspicious or infected. Additionally, if a threat is found, we could kick off a quick backup right at the time of notification. Now, why would you want this? Maybe you need to perform a forensics investigation. You can move that quick backup to immutable storage to ensure that you can investigate at a later date. Maybe you need to do some file level recovery. The possibilities are endless, but that integration with your existing tools is really where some of the true value comes in here. Now, once you detect and identify cyber threats, you also have to respond and recover. One of the key problems that we saw, once again, especially highlighted by that beautiful table there that Emily walked us through, is that threat might be in your environment for a long time. The last thing you want to do is restore your data and then just get reinfected again. That's how you wind up in those columns that we saw in the ransomware table where people are getting infected multiple times a year. They restore their backups and they just get reinfected again. So that's where tools like the Yara content analysis comes in. If you're not familiar with Yara, it basically allows you to proactively search for threats based off of customized rules that you could write, you can find online. But the point is, we take this as part of the recovery process so that you know if you're looking for a threat that's been identified, whether by yourself or your security team, you could see, hey, you know what, is it in here? What are my options if it is? If it's not, we're good to restore. Now, restoring at scale can definitely be tricky. Restoring a single machine or two, yeah, it might take a little bit of time, but when it comes to restoring things at scale, that's where Veeam Recovery Orchestrator really comes in. So VRO is able to leverage all those findings that we just talked about in VBR. It can instantly know, hey, you know what? Here's the last clean backup that we have. Or similarly, maybe as part of the orchestration process, you might want to perform another Yara scan as well as a malware scan using a more traditional tool such as, let's say, Microsoft Defender. But the real power comes in being able to do these things in bulk and then sometimes to different destinations. During a ransomware attack, maybe you invoked your cyber insurance policy and they said, you know what, you can't touch your hardware. Something like VRO can actually assist you with restoring your workloads directly into Azure. And lastly, for when seconds really matter, we've got the IO anomaly visualizer. So powered by Veeam continuous data protection, what this will allow you to do is if you're using CDP replicas, you can actually pull up a visual chart showing you the increased number of writes that had to be transmitted. Why is this important? Well, you can see it directly when an encryption event, for example, might have kicked off. Then you're able to do things like rollback just to before then. You can perform file level recoveries with that, or even application object recovery with that. Now that's all fine and dandy in case of an actual incident, but there's a lot of things that we could do to help you avoid that in the first place. A lot of these things are, think of them as day two operations, things we should be doing anyways. I mentioned multi-factor authentication. Well, now we also have what we call 4-eyes authorization for destructive actions. So now if you try to do something privileged, for example, like deleting backups, deleting a repository, or possibly adding a new privileged user, a second administrator actually has to approve that process now. Additionally, I mentioned the best practices analyzer. Well, that's been completely revisited. I believe we're up to about 30 different checks now. And what that does is it takes much more of a security focus. We take a look at the underlying Windows infrastructure that Veeam might be running on, but we also do things like, hey, are you actually adhering to the 3-2-1 process? Do you have copies of your backup? Are you leveraging immutability? So there might be product specific things in there, but they are also just general best practices. And lastly, to wrap this all up into one nice visible dashboard is the Veeam Threat Center. What this will do is it'll take findings from throughout and look for things, for example, such as RPO anomalies, notifications of malware attacks, and what's your overall security score from the Security and Compliance Analyzer, and provide it back to you in an easy to read dashboard. What's nice about this dashboard is it'll make the backup admin's life easier, but it's also a dashboard that could be shared out. If you have a security and compliance officer, they might be interested in this. Perhaps management's interested in this. Or maybe it's your security team who didn't previously have much of an insight into the backup infrastructure. And they might say, hey, you know what? We need a better idea. We need to be able to look into this data that we weren't able to look into before. So I mentioned briefly about scanning for threats. Currently, there are basically 4 different ways that we can scan for threats. So we've got the AV scan there at the bottom, which is the traditional scan that we've had for quite a while, since I believe Secure Restore, which was 9.5, update 4, I think was introduced. But we've expanded greatly on what we could do here. I mean, Emily, I don't know if you want to just talk about the inline scan. I know we'll see a demo of that quickly, but I think that's really the one that everyone's truly interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the point right there, right? Is that there's multiple ways that you can scan your data to ensure that you're going to have a clean, malware-free type of recovery, right? So the inline scanning is something that happens during the backup itself. So this is a process that's taking place while we are capturing the data off of VMware and we're writing that data as a backup file. We're being able to understand and identify when there have been significant enough changes that could indicate some type of malicious attack. So whether that's, a subset of data that has been highly compressed, if we're finding things like encrypted files or possible notes in there, right? That's what the inline scan is going to be there for. We'll kind of go through that in a demo. In-guest scanning is a way that we can kind of check the actual guest OS files for any type of malicious data or content. So we'll look for onion links, bad extensions, and this is all powered by the Veeam Butler API. So the Veeam Butler API is something that is publicly facing. So we actually have a list of known bad extensions on there or potential malware threats that users will be able to get that updated from their Veeam backup and replication console. So they're always getting the most up-to-date possible known threats that are going to be available for them to be able to scan across their guest OS. And that can be all achieved through just a simple checkbox, which we'll walk through. And then the Yara scan, like Matt mentioned earlier, right? Very particular because you got to actually know what you want to look for as part of the Yara scan. So you're just allowing Veeam to have access to that file for the Yara roles, and then we're able to scan across the backups and search for that specific related content to be able to show a flag of potential suspicious or infected data. So 4 different ways to scan, but those are always built into the Veeam Data Platform. And the best thing about it is even with all of these 4 technologies, you still have the additional ways that you can have Veeam scan and notify potential threats from that Veeam Incident API, which is coming from a third-party tool, a security vendor that you know and that you trust, that's able to integrate and give that information back down to the Veeam server. And allow us to get a little bit closer and closer to possible times of attack surfaces. So really great options there. So let's hop into a demo. So we're going to do this a little bit backwards. So we're going to talk about how we're going to secure and compliant your data first. And that's going to be diving into a little bit further of those pieces that, those last few pieces we just talked about. So first, let's go ahead and talk about 4eyes authorization. So here inside of the Veeam console, you'll have options to go ahead and add new users and roles. Essentially, you want to have at least 2 backup administrators that have access to BBR. Next, you can go ahead and create this, check this checkbox to essentially say that there's going to be a certain time period that's going to be allowed for people to do any type of deletion of backups. And in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm going to delete this backup from disk. We'll get a pop-up that'll say this needs to be approved by another administrator. You'll see in that top corner, we now see a pending approval. And this is going to be sitting in this waiting period to be deleted until my secondary admin comes in and approves it. Now I can reject it if I did it by accident, right? We did this for just an example. I could just remove it, but good news is things can't be deleted until then. Next, we have that security and compliance. So building on the best practices analyzer. So again, this is just going to go ahead and look at all the best practices, not just from a product implementation standpoint, but also from the actual Veeam or from the Windows server itself. So you can see in here, there's different infrastructure security alerts and alarms. We could choose to suppress certain alarms if we've built out our infrastructure to work in a certain way. So you could do that down here. You'll see which alarms have been suppressed. So that way you're not going to get a notification if they aren't, if they're failing or not implemented as part of the attempt. But you'll see things in here like, are you using the Veeam 3-2-1 rule? Do you have MFA enabled? Do you have immutability turned on, right? So it's going to look at that, and then you can also choose to schedule this versus having to run it ad hoc. So schedule it to run, go ahead and get those email notifications. And then finally, from here, we're going to go into the Veeam Threat Center. So here you can see where we can actually connect to your Veeam backup and replication server via Veeam 1. You get your data platform scorecard, which is going to give you percentages based off of how secure is your Veeam environment. You'll see the malware detection if we've identified any type of malicious points. You also have an SLA status. So if you're backing up thousands of workloads, you can see the percentage of SLAs that have been completed. And then finally, you'll just see in here some backup heat maps and some job calendars for how backups are running on a day-to-day basis and how you can possibly fix those if you're having any jobs run into each other. So really cool thing from the Veeam Threat Center. Again, super nice because this is ported in from Veeam 1. You'll actually see Veeam Threat Center as part of Veeam Backup and Replication. inside of Veeam 1, as well as in Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. So you'll have the same type of view underneath all three of those and be able to identify any type of issues or reporting capabilities all through the Veeam Data Platform. So let's go to our next demo, and here we're going to actually go ahead and start covering how we detect and identify cyber threats. So for this one, we're going to look at the inline detection scanner first. So up in the top corner, you have this malware detection icon, and this is going to allow you to enable that inline detection scanner. And again, this is going to look for entropy analysis. So it's going to look for compressed, encrypted files. It's going to look for possible changes that's happening with the backup job from the last time it was ran. And that's what it's going to be able to alert us on. So one thing to kind of keep in mind here. Next, you have your activity for the file system indexing. So if we start to notice a large number of files being deleted, because that could be seen as a malicious attack, especially if we don't have those files that were there. And then you have that option for the Butler API to go ahead and have it pull in and grab those known list of extensions and update that automatically for you. You have the incident API, so checking the box so that way we can allow for that quick rollback or the quick backup to happen if we were to be or have some type of infection that was to take place. And then you have your notifications for being notified once something has been triggered from one of these events. Inside of my example, what I'm just going to show you is here is a backup job that has ran. Inside of your backup statistics, you'll see in here just a quick little thing from Veeam saying, hey, we just created this. This is going to be the first time it happens. And this is to create that baseline so that way we know what looks normal for a Veeam backup file and then be able to start detecting when those anomalies take place. In your inventory side, this is where you actually will see any type of backup that pops up with a possible infection. So I could see that here. And then up on the top part, underneath options, you can actually go into your event forwarding. And this is where you can go ahead and you can connect to your syslog server and go ahead and have any of your events that are taking place within the console be forwarded up to your SIEM tool of choosing. So that way you can have your security teams or any of your other teams be alerted to any potential issues that are happening within the Veeam backup and replication server itself. Now, if we hop back into the Veeam Threat Center, just know you can actually connect to your Veeam 1 server from here. So again, there's that nice, beautiful dashboard directly from the Veeam Threat Center itself. Here's your list of alarms that Matt had mentioned earlier that you have access to, right? Underneath your settings, you can go ahead and you can select to have your syslog server be enabled. So that way we can have all of the alarms that are available within Veeam 1 also be alerted to and reported into your SIEM tool of choice. So that's a really great benefit to be proactive within the environment. And then you could also do the same thing for ServiceNow. So go ahead and connect to your ServiceNow instance and then be able to have all of these alerts funnel through. So if you want to create tickets based off of those certain alarms, if we want to make changes, or if we were to create or close any tickets, then those would also be referenced within Veeam 1 as well as ServiceNow. So there's some bi-directional communication that happens between these products. So really great, useful features and tools that you can go ahead and have enabled here just through the Veeam data platform itself. Next, let's go ahead and talk about our last one, which is respond and recover faster. So there we go. So here we want to talk about how we're actually going to be recovering from a ransomware attack. So we already went through the process of securing our environment, making sure that it is ready to go. We've gone through the process of how we can integrate with all the different types of different security tools and being able to do our backups to identify any type of threat. But now let's actually talk about what do we do once we actually have been hit? How do we recover from those types of events? So here in this one, what we're going to go through first is that Yara content analysis. So underneath my backups, I can just go ahead and I can highlight a backup from here. So once I right click on a backup, you'll have this option to scroll down and go to scan backup. Now this will give you options to either find a last clean restore point, find a restore point within a specific range, or scan all restore points in a range. So you could do this ad hoc at any point in time based off of the backups that you have access to. You could check the box to scan it with the AV signature of your choice, and then you also have the option to scan it with a specific YARA rule. So you can go ahead and upload those YARA rules onto the BBR server. There's a nice folder where you can place them in, and then you'll be able to select those YARA rules that you want to have leveraged to perform the scanning on that specific backup file here. So that'll go ahead and cover the process of how we can go ahead and scan and leverage that engine to do it. So you see, here's the process that kind of kicks off here. We can see the infrastructure resources, and then you saw Windows Defender got kicked off for the signature scan. Underneath inventory, I showed there's the malware detection option. So it's actually already showing in here that we've already identified this potential restore point as being infected. If I were to click on details, I could see it was detected based off of the AV scan that was performed. So it was identified from a signature. But this will pop up for anything else. So if it was from a YARA rule, if it was from the Veeam Incident API, it'll show those additional options in here, and then you can decide on what you want to do with that restore point moving forward. Next, we're going to hop into Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. So orchestrating restores for multiple backups. So let's say it's not just one single backup that we need to recover from, it's for multiple virtual machines. So inside Recovery Orchestrator, I have a recovery plan that's already been created. It hosts a set of my backups, and here I want to actually do the restore to a new location. So underneath the restore options, I'll have the option to actually check for malware. So we'll go ahead and we can scan the restore points to see if there's anything that's already been identified as malicious or suspicious. We can select the amount of restore points we want to have this be scanned to. We can also connect it automatically to the network or without network connection. And then we have our additional checks to do it with a signature scan or, again, using YARA rules. So this just helps from like a larger perspective. If we want to scan multiple restore points at once or multiple backup files at once, I could do that all through Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. And finally, Veeam CDP. So here I have my CDP replicas that have already been running. And as you could see, when I right clicked and hit on one of my CDP replicas, I could show where we can have that IO anomaly visualizer. So this will allow me to go ahead and restore to a specific point in time. If we saw any of those infected points or changes that have happened or spikes within the IO journal, we would actually see that here. Looks like everything's green for me, particularly for this CDP replica. So nothing has happened that has caused any type of outage yet. But if there was, we would see some of those different points that would be showcased here, and we could just roll back to that specific point in time. So getting you closer to recovery without having to lose too much data loss is what the biggest point for CDP IO anomaly analyzer is all here for. And then your last thing with the IO anomaly analyzer or with CDP in general is you can always just right click and you can do a restore of those items at a more granular basis. So SQL, a lot of those Veeam Explorers that we've had access to for quite some time, those are all accessible with CDP to be able to do granular restores of application items. So be sure to check that out if you get a chance. So that was kind of a quick demo session for, I would say, almost 9-ish new capabilities within the 23H2 platform. But, you know, to that point, there was so much that went into this release this year. I mean, everything that's in green is everything that we tried to cover today. But I mean, some of the items that you see here in purple are probably some of our bigger items that a lot of customers have been asking for support for quite some time. So backup of object storage is obviously one that I was super excited to see made it within this release. So you can now back up, you know, your object storage if you're using that for files or for certain data points, right? We could use that to be able to back up and recover that as we see fit. Matt, is there any in here that you are particularly fond of?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you, I love the backup of object storage, but I think it also opens the door for folks who might need to get a copy of their data outside of the cloud. So let's say you're keeping a lot of data within S3. Maybe there's some sort of requirement that, you know what, we need to have a copy in a different system somewhere. If you want, you can actually pull that back to on-prem, you can send it to another cloud, lots of options there. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the Veeam AI assistant. You know, that's totally about bringing you support right within the console. You have questions about configuration, how do I set this up? Maybe what ports do I need open? You can ask AI assistant. It's trained on Veeam docs, so it's not just random docs out on the internet. And you'll get that response, right? It might save you from having to open up a support case. And the whole idea is to bring the data closer to you, right? Bring the answer closer to you. But yeah, Emily, as you mentioned, there's just so much in this release. I mean, really, you would think this would be a major release with the number of changes that came in with it, but it's, yeah, absolutely, it's massive. Now, the good news is it's available now. Easy to download. You just go to veeam.com, grab the update there, scan the QR code if you want. And one of the nice things is if you're new to Veeam, the trial that you can download actually has the entire data platform in one ISO. So you can take that, you can install it all on one machine. You'll get all the components that you need to run Veeam Backup Replication, Veeam One, and Veeam Recovery Orchestrator, all in the easy to test box. Now with that, we've reached the end here. We do have time for a couple of quick questions. I see that some came through here, so let me read off the first one here. It's great to see improvements to Sure Backup, especially support for NSXT. Yes, that was on the slide there.
Matt, I think we lost you. You went in and you went out. No worries. I think Matt is having technical difficulties. It's fine. I have access to those questions, so I'll just go ahead and cover them here. So question one was, so it was great to see improvements for backup, especially support for NSXT. One of the challenges that we face today is the length of time it takes to run a Sure Backup job due to the number of machines in it. Seen requests in the R&D forum to allow for testing random VMs. Is there any news on this new feature request? And yes, so that was an excellent question. Wasn't something that we covered today, but that is something that is available in VBR 12.1. So inside of the new Sure Backup job, you'll be able to actually specify a number of random machines that you want to have tested as part of that Sure Backup job. It is truly random. Meaning that we're not even going to keep track of the machines that have been previously tested. That'll probably eventually get updated as well, but this is a new ability to just be able to exclude objects as part of the Sure Backup job as well. So definitely something to check out, so that way you can kind of throw all your jobs inside of a single Sure Backup job and have all your VMs tested. The next question was, one of the challenges that we face with VRO, so Veeam Recovery Orchestrator today, is post-restore configuration changes, particularly when we are restoring a machine from on-prem to Azure. Is there any way to automate what might be manual changes today? So that is a very good question, and the answer, of course, to that is yes. So with version 7, you have the ability to actually run a script. So I don't even think I showed that inside of the what's new partial feature request, or the partial feature release. But there is scripts that are now available for you to utilize as part of the machine level and as part of that recovery process. Now this could be incredibly useful for post-restore operations that may need to make, or if you need to make some changes to the network information or permissions, whatever it may be. But you can now add that custom script as a part of your recovery plan within Veeam Recovery Orchestrator. And then finally, where can I learn more about Veeam Recovery Orchestrator? So start veeam.com. So you can definitely go there. You can download a trial today. One of the first slides that you saw was that VRO is part of the Veeam Data Platform. So everything is all packaged together, like Matt had mentioned. There's also something called hands-on labs that you can all leverage. So with hands-on labs, you could get access to the latest and greatest within Veeam 23H2, and you can actually go in and start messing with a pre-configured environment. It'll walk you through a lab configuration. So that way you can just kind of get your hands on product quicker without having to mess with product in your own environment. So that is also an option, but of course, reach out directly to your sales reps or reach out to your Veeam SC. They're more than happy to kind of help set it up and get you access to those hands-on labs and to the Veeam University. I know we're going to have a few more questions left, so what we'll do is we'll take some of those questions and we'll answer those separately. But for that, thank you so much for everybody for joining myself and Matt today. We greatly appreciate it. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you guys, Matt and Emily. What a wonderful conversation. Matt, thanks for powering through. You know, it's not a webinar if somebody isn't muted at some point. It's just part of the fun of the show, right? So thank you for powering through that, and thanks for a great conversation. Really interesting exploration of the awesome Veeam 23H2 data platform, and of course, radical resiliency. Now, I want to remind all of you to visit that handout section before you head out. Make sure you've downloaded those resources and follow-ups from our chat here today. Make sure you've got that data protection trends report for 2024, that full report waiting for you there in the handouts tab. Also, grab that white paper, Building a Cyber Resilient Data Recovery Strategy. And again, you can explore the Veeam Data Platform linked right there in the handouts tab. Just awesome ways to follow up. These conversations are just the tip, right? It's just the starting point. It's just the jumping off point. And then you keep rolling through that iceberg. You keep exploring from there because there's so much more to learn. So start with these handouts, make your life easy, and just grab those now so you've got them for later when you're wanting to recall some of the awesome content that we jumped into today. All right, now before you go, as you can see from the screen, it is time for a prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card for someone who is here live, present, and awesome at the webinar with us today. And that live, present, awesome human is Brian Melock from Texas. Brian Melock from Texas. Congratulations to you, Brian. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Veeam for making this webinar possible, and especially to our incredible speakers here with us today. Matt and Emily, you've given us so much to think about and lots to look forward to as we jump in. Maybe for some of you, it's really starting to think about this sense of resiliency or radical resiliency, or maybe this is something you've been doing for a long time and you're looking to enhance or refine. Wherever you're at, I hope that you learned something new from our conversation today. Which also brings me around to my biggest high five and biggest thank you of the day, which of course goes to all of you for making this conversation possible. Now, I know that sometimes it's difficult to stop. You know, we're so focused on the day-to-day and we're so in it that it can be difficult to pull our heads up and think with that strategic lens on. And especially with resiliency planning, not only are we looking up, are we looking out ahead, we're also planning for something that we hope never happens. We kind of hope we never have to use all these plans, right? So it's not easy to make mental space in our day to think about this sort of planning ahead. But today, you all took that step towards radical resiliency. You took that time, you put in the energy and effort, and I'm so happy that we could be a part of that with you here today. Now, I know I've learned a ton. I hope that you have too, and I hope that we will see you on a webinar again soon. Until that day, have an absolutely beautiful end to your afternoon.